Are you going?
I'm going. Hey, we're going live. Good evening. This is Moto Talk with Steve and Kim. I'm Steve, and that's Kim over there. And we have Jon Gick with us this evening. We're going to talk about something else with two wheels. And Kim was turned around because he had some shirt on that said Young's on it.
Yes, I'm rocking a Hank Young shirt. If you don't know who Hank Young is, go Google it. He has a hot rod shop in Georgia, and he's one of the finest fabricators and builders there is on the earth today.
How we doing, guys? Hey, Aaron.
Hey, that's my kid.
That's Kim's daughter right there, Aaron Nicole. Can you hear us out there in the internet, interweb, whatever you want to call it?
Interwebs.
Hey, David. Interweb. All right. Well, hey, welcome to the show. We're here again. This is, it's the 14th episode. I can't even believe it. It feels like it's been
amazing.
Like 6.
It does, yeah.
Hey, just an announcement. We've got something coming up that actually I'm going to be kind of a part of. The Mecum auction is coming to Indianapolis. I believe it's May 14th through the 22nd. And I guess I can announce it now. I've posted it on the internet, but this CB750 right here is going to be in the auction. I know it's a shocker. We'll talk about it later, but there are some reasons that I'm letting that one go, and we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, so to narrow that down, let's just say that Steve has enjoyed this motorcycle. He got it at a great price, but the current stratospheric level of value of these things is so far off the chart that it's kind of hard to resist that if you're not absolutely in love with it. So, he may even be in love with it, but the money's kind of important too. So having it 2 years past the 50th anniversary of that bike, and that's an OG unrestored, real candy blue green, first generation 750. So it'll bring a lot. Let's just say it's a lot. You could buy a really nice car for what that's going to bring.
All right, so we got a special guest with us today, Jon Gick. Kim, why don't you start us off with this?
Yeah, we're really fortunate to have Jon here for a number of reasons. Not only is Jon somebody who's been there and done that in the lane that he's been in with regard to his travels in the world and what he learned on those travels and how he translated that into a business locally, working on some of the things he learned about when he was traveling worldwide. And Jon, has many facets. I've met Jon through some common friends that do sprint cars. Jon's devoted to it. You can see his USAC hat as we sit. Not a winged fan, but likes USAC, as do I. And Brian Smith, if you're on here, you'll understand why he feels that way. But, we're here to talk about two-wheeled things, and Jon can go into that and some of his world travels. But what I would just say is, if you have a question for Jon, we'd certainly love to ask it. And we'd certainly also like to hear any feedback you have about what we're talking about. So from there, Jon, I'll just say thanks for coming, first of all. Secondly, I know a lot of people have been in motorcycling, but I don't know that many people that have chosen the path you've taken. And I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, but you were more of a novice when you began some of your world travels, and you kind of branched out into the specifics of how you got into your lane in the sport. Talk a little bit about what took you overseas and why you went there and what you learned while you were there.
Thanks, Kim. So, probably about 15, 20 years ago, I was in a relationship with a girl, and, that went south and we broke up. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do? And, I really enjoyed being an Asian. I've been a few times, and I got my backpack, a passport, and some money. And I flew into Saigon, Vietnam, and started spending some time there and started traveling through Vietnam, and went back several times. And, I'd always see these old vehicles still on the road in Vietnam. And I always thought that was really cool. You see old Lambrettas and Vespas and old Hondas. And so they're still there. They're still being utilized either in the business carrying things industry, or, you see some older guys riding old Vespas and old Lambrettas. So it's still there. And I always enjoyed, I've always enjoyed old stuff. And it could be, car racing to clothes, to music, to history. And it really it took me in. I really enjoyed that. So I thought, well, riding two wheels in Asia is the way to get around. If I was going to do that, it was going to be on something cool and something old.
Absolutely.
That was how I got into it. I knew Vespa existed. I knew they were in the States, and I'd see them, the clubs out in San Francisco if I visited, but I was not really thinking about it at the time. But when I would see them on the road being actively used, I thought, this is really
thing
neat.
Ever. Yeah.
Yeah. It's still being used, and not on a once a week meetup for donuts or, tacos or things that we enjoy, but they're going to work on them.
They're using it.
They're going to school on them. It's how they get around. So it's a really neat thing over there.
So let me ask something. The Vespas, I love the look of the Vespas. I've not been much of a scooter person, but if there were a scooter I was going to have, it'd probably be a Vespa. And part of the reason would be is most of them are two strokes. No, like all the older ones, were they always two strokes?
Yeah. So all the old stuff is two stroke up to about maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
They started going a different direction with four strokes.
Gotcha.
So Vespa at this time produces no more two strokes. They're out of that business.
Okay.
But all the old stuff is all two strokes, and depending what years and how it was set up, it could be 2% or 4, 5, 6. Just depends how that was done.
And the ones that I typically see on YouTube they're either souped up or some of the 250s are just fast. Period. Right?
Yeah, I mean they can be fast. I mean you can go anywhere from very, very slow stock to lethargic, maybe something that can keep up with modern city traffic, but then you can go to something that's really has a lot of guts where you're tripling and maybe quadrupling the horsepower. I mean, they're coming out. I just saw it today that there's a manufacturer, a small company that's coming out with a 400cc cylinder for a Vespa.
Oh,
I mean, that's
big.
That's a big old two-stroke thumper. Yeah. And, it's a cool time to be into Vespa and Lambretta now. I mean, just the parts, the research and development is just exploding within probably the last 10 years. So it's a great time to be in it. And what's really neat in my love in Vespa is probably dates back really early. I enjoy the stuff from the 50s.
Okay.
Those are my favorite bikes.
When was the earliest one?
46, 47, right around there. Post World War II. How do you get around post World Italy, after the war? And Piaggio's the parent company, and they made a lot of different things through the years.
Airplanes.
Yeah, they did make airplanes for Mussolini.
Yeah.
But they made trains. Yeah, they made trains, they made boats, they made all types of stuff. But after World War II, they transitioned into scooters. That's what they did.
I think a lot of that happened in other models and
yeah. And I've only got just a tiny little bit of exposure to this, but I did see something that fascinated me, and I'd like your perspective on this. Everything from Italy has a style to it. Doesn't really matter what it is. It could be clothes, glasses, motorcycles, cars. They put a great deal of importance upon a style. And Vespa kind of started out with the various colors, different looks. It was more of a cultural thing than it was necessarily all utilitarian, or at least they migrated toward that.
Yeah.
How did that get into the culture of the scooter people now, like the ones you encounter in the U.S.? Is it even similar?
Well, there was different manufacturers throughout Europe that was making scooters before Piaggio started making them, but they were utilitarian. They really didn't have that style that we love today. And that didn't come out, that I think Vespa was the ones that hit it out of the park. It just has that look.
Is that more like a Zundap, Mako, those kind of things?
Yeah, possibly. I mean,
I know they made some ugly ones in Great Britain.
Bikes or scooters?
Scooters.
Yeah. I mean, Vespas or different types of scooters. I mean, BSA.
No, other than, the BSAs.
They made BSA scooters there. They made different things, and those were okay. I own an NSU scooter, and it's, you look at it, you're like, okay. I mean, it's neat. It's in the States, there's not a lot of them, but the Vespa just has that look.
Yeah, it does.
I think the one thing about Vespa is, it was a transportation for a blue collar person. And that was the cool thing about it. Today when you go buy a new Vespa, it's salty. Rich, man. It's salty.
It's salty. Yep.
It's salty. But back then it was for the blue collar person. how to get, to pick up the groceries, how to go to work, on and on and on. The colors at the beginning, like the late 40s to 50s, they were, slate gray. They were seafoam green, kind of those classic, 1950s colors. And I love that. But I think they started really branching out into the 60s, 70s, to the colors.
Kind of a mod thing, like the mod rockers deal.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a thing in England, and there's a lot of people in America that's into that. I'm not so much at all. I'm very Americana when it comes to Vespas. I don't really always understand the whole mods and rockers and Northern soul music, but that's a big thing. That's a big influence here that a lot of scooter people enjoy. But yeah, I mean, you start getting into the mods and rockers. I think that was the late 60s
and 70s.
Yeah. Right around in there. And they really started to make their scooters very fashionable, much more than just transportation.
So it's like famously on the cover of the Who album, Quadrophenia, and also in the movie.
Yeah, that would be one, but I think it's in a lot of different, albums and a lot of different movies. And that was a pretty big deal. That's I think probably when it became more than just transportation.
Yeah. So I'm interested again to kind of drag it back to what you experienced when you were in Saigon. You went there for a different purpose than looking at motorcycles. But when you found that these old vehicles were around, what put the hook in you to go toward that, to go toward Vespa and the scooters? Or, I mean, I don't know.
Versus a big bike?
Yeah, versus any motorcycle, really.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're to me, it was always... I always liked that look of someone riding a Vespa. It just seemed to really fit. And I think the first time I rode one, I was like, I was hooked. I got to try it. I rode one. They're navigable. They're easy to ride. They're anywhere from about.
You mean like that one right there?
Yeah, actually, I built the engine in that bike right there. That's my buddy Jeff out at I think that's Brown County Dragway.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's taking that down the strip. I actually built that motor for him. That bike lives up in the Fishers area. That's where that thing's at.
Yeah. So John's business is called Gick Speed, right?
Yeah, right.
Yep.
And so not only does he have the cultural connection to it personally, but also the mechanical connection to it now. And again, I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about when you were in Vietnam first, you felt you were not terribly skilled, but now you're like a go-to person for this sort of thing.
Right.
How did that migration happen and how long did it take?
Well, Vietnam was a good thing for me. And, when that relationship failed and, we just got to pick up what you got and start over and figure some things out. And I went over there and I wasn't looking for that. And that just came to me because I think I just love all that old stuff. And, I got my first Vespa and started riding that. It was cool. And, it was turnkey. And so
what year was that one?
Oh, that was a 64, like a common 150. I mean, not real powerful, but it was cool. And I had it here and I ended up buying a Bajaj. That was the second one that was under license from Vespa that made them in India. And
was it a step through model?
Yeah. And it was cool. I ended up getting in an accident in that and was out of work for a long time for 3 months and broke my foot.
In the US.
Yeah. Like downtown Indianapolis.
Oh man.
Yeah, not good.
No, I don't recommend it.
It was not good, but I had a helmet and this is perfect. That stayed perfect. So
I know you heard that, Aaron, the Bajaj.
Yeah. Woohoo. That's where you.
So we're here talking with Jon Gick. If you haven't heard, if you're just tuning in, and one thing I'll let you guys know, if you are watching this from my Facebook page and you make comments, we don't see it in the feed. So you might want to go over to Hoy Vintage Cycles or go to Hoy Vintage Cycles Facebook, Hoy Vintage Cycles on YouTube, and you can actually ask some questions in the comments and we'll see them. I'll try to flip over to my page too while John's talking. But if you have any questions about this, and just like Kim was saying, John is the Vespa guy around here. So if a Vespa comes to Hoy Vintage Cycles
or Lambretta or whatever,
it goes to John. It doesn't go. It doesn't stay at Hoy Vintage Cycles very long.
And vice versa with Honda. So, I don't want anything to do with it.
Anyway, feel free to ask some questions. I'll let Kim get back to his original question there.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So we were talking about how did that go from just riding it to working on it and creating a business. And I think that's when there's no one around you, to help you out. You just got to figure it out yourself. And I was, mechanically inclined, but really I didn't know anything about it other than writing. I mean, I could write it. So, one thing started, one thing went from another, and, I bought that second bike, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go through it. And I did. And that's where that kind of took off. And then, I have some friends around here that said, hey, can you do this for me? I said, sure. You buy the, we'll buy the parts, we'll do it. And so I did a lot of free work for people.
So
that's how you learn it.
That's a good point. I don't think of it. I mean, it's funny how you see it through your own lens. For me, and perhaps even for Steve, we see what we like. We have an anchor into the old vintage bike place, and like modern bikes, and are open-minded enough to understand that there are people out there that like Vespas. I don't necessarily unlike Vespas. It's just not my lane.
Yeah.
But how would you describe the Indianapolis community of scooter people? It seems to me to be a pretty close group, and it's not necessarily a huge group. It's just different than the motorcycle thing.
Yeah. I've known a lot of people through the years, Vespa people, and they've always been great. We've lost a few over the years, and we just lost Gene Starr, and he just passed away a week or two, and he was a good guy. He really helped me out for years with work and learning it. Gene helped me along, and he would always share his shop space with me, and that was a cool thing, working out of his shop a few times that I did. And as far as the group, it has changed some faces, but it is unique in that it's made up of a lot of different people, and some of those folks some of them are vintage people, some are modern people, but I mean they're out there. I don't think it's not as big as a San Francisco or Florida, where you've got the perfect temperature and you can ride these things year round. It's not that. So I think as far as like the hardcore, vintage Vespa Lambretta person, there's maybe 5 or 10 of them in town.
What's the main difference between like a Lambretta and the Vespa?
Well, I think it's like a Ford and Chevy of Italy.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. So they're a major competitor.
Yeah, I would say they're major competitors. I think Vespa did a better job. They started way earlier, and they're still going. And Vespa, they'd have these big kind of battles with each other. They did a lot of different sporting events. Vespa ended up sponsoring the Novi Special in 1956 at the Indy 500 here.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Paul Russo, he ran that car. He ran it for 21 laps, led 11, spun out.
Oh man,
crashed. But you could see it on his car, on the Novi car. It was the Novi Vespa Special. That was very cool.
Scooter racing is like a big sport too overseas, right?
It's absolutely huge in Europe.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you get a lot of that research and development, a lot of that dollars going into it. And bikes are getting way and way and way faster. We're talking bikes up to 70 and 80 horsepower out of a 180 pound bike.
Man.
So, I mean, that is not for street use.
No.
I mean, it's not, but you could just imagine that.
One of the YouTube videos I saw was a guy going down some twisties, and like every time he was hitting it, it was the front wheel was just coming up, up and up.
Yeah.
Every time.
We would do these rides. I remember a few years ago, myself and some friends, we would always do these rides down to Brown County and anywhere south. We always loved going south, taking these smaller roads. And this one ride in particular, there were some guys on Harleys. They were up in front of us, and we would, in the corners, we'd kill and we'd catch up to them. But on these straightaways, they would just clobber us. And it honestly, it was all in good fun. But it was a good time. And you just have that power through the corners and
I bet it wasn't fun for the Harley guys.
Yeah, probably not.
They didn't like you seeing you rip those corners, probably.
But I mean, you could do that when you're on a lightweight bike. You don't have to have all the horsepower. These big, huge engines. These are single cylinder engines,
right?
And pretty simple.
What would you say is the most sophisticated scooter out there, despite age or technology?
Probably. You mean as far as mechanically?
Yeah. What would qualify as like a real hot rod scooter?
Oh.
Or do you have to make it yourself?
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff coming out of Europe now that if they've got the part, you got the money for it. So a lot of the stuff is based on the PX line, which was 1970 to about 2005. And
that's a Vespa specific thing.
It's a very Vespa specific line during that time. So a lot of that stuff, that the cylinders and the clutches and the gears that are coming out, that's pretty much for that engine. You could put them on earlier stuff, but once you do one thing, you got to do all the others.
So what's the biggest production Vespa they made? Was it a 250?
Probably the 150.
150. So you're putting a 400cc cylinder on a 150 crank?
They're probably doing it on a set of 200 cases, or they're getting cases that are CNC machined.
So the 200 cases are aftermarket things?
Now, they actually, the 200cc was the biggest engine that, as far as vintage two-stroke Vespa, they made the 200. But, you can get cylinder kits that are big. But I think stuff for the 400cc cylinders, you have to get CNC machine cases. You can't, you're not going to be able.
So it'd be billet parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's out there, but it looks like a Vespa case. When you look at it, you wouldn't know. You're looking at an engine in a Honda. You're seeing not all of it. You're seeing some of it.
Right.
Same thing with the Vespa. Half of it's covered up, so you would never know what's on that top end. So the next time you come to a ride and you see some scooter and you're laughing at it,
be careful.
You might
be careful.
Someone might have invested a whole bunch of money.
He might be going right by you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's possible.
So I see a note here from Dusty. It's a good question, and it's reinforced by Jerry Orham's question. We have worked on some Cushman bikes in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
My take on it, and I'll just say how I see it, and then you tell me how you see it. Cushman to me is Neanderthal by comparison. I mean, it's for all practical purposes, an industrial engine on a very simple frame with almost no suspension. And I know they have an endearing group of people that really loves them and they're valuable. We've had a Mustang. I've had more than one Mustang in the place, and they were made by a former, aircraft manufacturer in California.
Nebraska.
Well, they do now, but they were made in California first. No, Mustangs. And they kind of got closer to a motorcycle. They even had a gearbox from Italy.
Yeah.
But there's, to my way of thinking, to Jerry's question, does a Cushman fit into a scooter category? And I would say no, but what would you say?
I would say yes. It's a step through. Cushman isn't for me. It's not really my cup of tea, but I know Stephen Lorenz up at Arcadia Cushman, great guy. That's his thing. That's his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
He lives and breathes that stuff. I've got a couple Cushman badged Vespas, and those, I've got 3 of the GS 150s. That was the Grand Sport. That was at the time, the race bike for Vespa in the early 60s. And they brought them over. They sold them at Cushman. They just put the Cushman badge on there, and it said made in Italy, but not all Cushman shops.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Not all Cushman shops would sell it because it was made in Italy. It was an American.
Right. That's one of the reasons that people are drawn to Cushmans, I think, because they're
cool.
They're American.
I love that Americana. And that's, for me, I'm not the mod guy. I'm not the Northern Soul guy. I'm not wearing a tight suit with a skinny tie. It's not really what I'm into.
Are you the stock guy?
I'm like the Americana guy. The guy that, loves, what I really love is the Vespa Allstate. So the Vespas that were sold through Sears with the Allstate
Sears
badge.
catalog. Yep.
So I'm really a Vespa Allstate guy. That's what I love. I have Vespas, but I probably have more Allstate badge Vespas.
I was big in the Pook 250s for a while, and those were sold in Sears as well, Allstate.
Yeah.
So what's unique about a Vespa sold through Sears? Anything at all, or does it compare to an Italian one that's just badged differently?
Yeah. So most of the stuff that came over, there was, instead of a 150, you would get a 125. And the front end, on most Vespas, you would have a spring and a damper on a trailing link. Totally terrible idea, but that's what they did. On the Vespas that came over that were sold to Sears, they did away with the damper. So you just had a spring.
Oh, okay.
It's
No kidding.
Yeah, it's really floaty going down the road. But once you get used to it and you wrap your head around with it, you're like, it is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
Right. So, but the early ones from the 50s were really cool. They had stamped aluminum floor rails. And those bikes are very sought after from Europe and Asia. I mean, people kill me on Facebook. I get all these like, how much do you want for it? I'm like, that's not for sale. And usually I don't even reply because it's just it's too much. But those go for big dollars in Europe and Asia. I mean, huge money.
Yeah, and they would pay to ship it over there.
They'll pay it. Yeah, they'll pay it. I mean, it's crazy. I would never pay that much for those bikes.
Oh yeah,
I would pay to see Dusty Pine ride a step through a scooter.
We need to get Dusty.
We'll put you on one
of those bad boys.
Yeah, you got to do that.
He wants the 400cc one.
Yeah.
Well, save up. I mean, those are probably by the time you're done, that engine's probably $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 engine.
Oh man!
I mean, you're getting CNC machine cases. You're getting that top end's got to be at least $1,500, $2,000. throw in another, $800 clutch, which rides on the crank. Another bad idea, but that's what they did.
But realistically, even if it's 400 cc's, what's it going to make? 45 horsepower, 50?
Those are probably coming out about 70, 80 horsepower.
Really?
Man,
The 400
Yikes.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's not practical for street use. It's for the tracks in Europe. But yeah, I saw it today. Incredible. I mean, it's huge, just a huge cylinder.
Roy said that Kim does not like little tires.
No, but because you're right about that. But I'll avoid, unless Roy wants to come on and talk about when he demonstrated how easy it was to ride one for me.
Yes.
I think it was a freshly painted
that,
bike.
yeah.
John might even know that story. I don't know.
I think the only story
Isn't Roy racing little scooters, like mini bike scooters?
Well, I worked on one for him. The class is that you have to have no suspension and you have to have like a Predator motor in it.
Really sketchy foot pegs.
Really sketchy foot pegs, especially if the frame's built by a highly skilled sprint car guy.
So we've got a question from the other side of the world here. Malcolm is in Tasmania.
Oh yeah, hi Malcolm.
Hey Malcolm, how you doing, buddy? Who built the first scooters, Italy or Japan?
Yeah, I don't.
Oh no,
I actually don't even.
I don't even know.
I mean,
Kim might not even know this.
I know
one.
Vespa, but there was manufacturers in Italy that was making scooters way before Vespa.
Okay,
which I don't really care about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you were right about the European market was more robust than it was in some of the pre-war areas, and I think the Marshall Plan was responsible for putting some of those production places in business, and so the Italians and the Germans and the Japanese started building things as a result of the post-war economic conditions. But
so we don't know, Malcolm. We're gonna have to Google.
So that. It was probably Germany or Austria, like Pook or somebody that did it before.
Austrians or something like
some
that.
guys like that.
It's some small shop that made 5.
That
was it. That was that.
I don't know of any Japanese scooters that are older than like the late 60s.
Yeah, I don't think it was common.
Or mid 60s.
There was a manufacturer for Fuji. Fuji made the Silver Pigeons, which were kind of cool. They kind of looked like a Lambretta a little bit.
What year would that have been?
Oh, when did they came out with those? Probably in the 60s.
Oh, okay.
And I think they ran them like for 10 years or so. And they sold them new in America. They're here. I've personally worked on one and ridden it, and it's okay. But it certainly doesn't handle like a Vespa.
Okay.
So I see a note here from Zachary asking about Harley Topper. I know what that is. Yeah. I'm sure John does too.
Yeah.
But it's more, I would put it in the Cushman category.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it reminds me of is a Cushman. They come up for sale. I mean, you can buy it and it's badged Harley Davidson.
Are they pricey?
No, I don't think so.
Not like a Cushman.
I always wanted to buy one and drive it to a Harley Davidson event. Because you get half the guys, like the older guys would know what it is, and the young guys would give you a whole bunch of crap, but it's a Harley.
Yeah.
So I think there'd be some mixed emotions there.
Well, it's kind of like the AMF Harleys, the on off-road enduros. Those were made in Italy, right? And then Harley bought them out or something.
So again, Zachary's asking, did Harley sell Italian Harley scooters? I have a Harley Davidson promotional bike it's an Indian, but it's actually something called an MM5. It's a little tiny Italian mini bike. It's the one I have hanging in my ceiling. It was sold at a Harley Davidson dealership. It's actually painted in Harley XLX colors. Yeah. But I think that was very unusual. They certainly did sell Air Mach-E motorcycles, but I don't remember a scooter from Air Mach-E.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that. I just don't know.
Harley made snowmobiles.
Sometimes we don't know stuff. Okay.
Yeah,
everybody?
I don't know that. Yeah, you probably know more about. Okay, so that question has to be answered by Dusty Pine.
I always, my take on the Vespa, and there's a whole bunch of scooters, whole bunch of manufacturers out there. I mean, European was full of manufacturers, all types of rare and cool stuff out there. But I always was drawn to the Vespa just by the look of it. And I never really concentrated on anything else because I always thought, well, if I'm going to do one thing, if I'm going to do something, I want to do one thing and do it right. And that's what I've always concentrated on. That
is one thing that's nice about having a niche.
Yeah.
Staying with one bike, unlike what we do.
That's what I was going to say. That's why I work on so many things. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Things. Yeah, we have no clue what's going on. So tell us a little bit about your shop and
AMF bowling balls. Nick Avery.
Hey Nick, how you doing?
Have you got one of those up at LA?
Yeah, show us
an
your
AMF bowling
ball. Never mind. So tell us a little bit about your shop. Where is it? You probably are all word of mouth. Do you sell a lot of parts? Do you what's like the main thing?
Yeah. So, when I was really kind of advancing myself through working on scooters and kind of, starting to get my life back together, and I thought, I'm hanging out with different people, and you become the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time around in your life. And so I started to hang out with successful people, at least what I deem successful. And I was like, okay, I want to get a shop, but I also want a house.
Mm-hmm.
So I got with my real estate guy, which was Joe Shoemaker. He was a local. He rides a Vespa All-State, and he's out in California now, but he found a shop with a house attached to it.
Very nice.
So it's in Irvington. That's where it's at. So the shop's,
Perfect.
The shop's behind my house. And so that's kind of where it starts. That's where I'm at nearly 7 days a week. And because I just love it. I enjoy it. I just get into it.
How many customer bikes are you working on at one particular time? Could it be
about
4 or 5?
Yeah, that's my limit, because
that's about right.
Beyond that, you just start
all you can do.
You start getting lost.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's too overbearing. It's too much. And I've been grateful because the demand's there. Like I'm busy.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? And one specific basic type of bike.
I got busier through Corona.
Yeah, we did too. Actually.
Yeah, we did too.
I think what it was is all this old stuff was sitting in someone's corner or their
They're
basement.
sitting at home looking at it,
and
going,
looking
"Boy,
at
I
it
wish
like-
it sure ran."
Yep.
They cleaned out the garage with all their spare
Yep.
time and then
That's
found it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up getting Corona. I mean, I didn't get Corona, but I got busy through Corona. And I'm nothing but grateful for the work, and I appreciate that. And it's
awesome.
something I love to do. So I'm on.
We have another question from Benjamin up here. He's on YouTube. Full restoration versus original.
Yeah, I love original stuff.
Yep.
It's only original
I do
once.
too.
I love that history. Every bike has a history when you look at it. I don't care if it's a motorcycle, scooter, but I love that stuff. Original paint. Maybe the motor could be gone through, but
Sure. Yeah,
it just
especially
depends.
if you need to make it run, right?
Yeah, especially a lot of scooters in America. There were just they were never transportation. They were just recreation. You use it on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You might run it a couple times on the week.
Right.
But I'm getting Vespas that are 50, 60 years old with 3,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
All the time. I mean, that's not unusual.
And they all do have a story. Some of them will have a ding from a little wreck, and someone will recollect that if maybe you have an original owner or whatnot. So it's kind of neat to have it original.
I love the honesty of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's beneath that paint. It's honest.
Yeah.
A painted bike, you never know. Whenever I see a painted bike and someone's maybe giving me some photos, or I'm looking at something on Facebook and it's painted and it's like, well, how good is it? What's the hammer and dolly work like? What does this repair look like? I mean, you never know. You just never know with that stuff.
Yeah.
And if you go to paint a bike and paint a car, whatever, and get those photos of the bare metal, because whoever's going to buy that from you, they're going to appreciate that. I trust you, and it's going to be
that's a good
way
point.
more valuable.
Yeah, I had a really good
that.
experience at this. I was over at Carrie's, and Carrie's helped me to learn quite a bit about painting and laying down finishes.
Oh, yeah.
He's a terrific mentor.
Gary Krasino.
Yeah, Gary Krasino. And so John, you've had several bikes over there, but I saw one that really was beat. I mean, it had all kinds of body problems.
I forgot that you've used him. So
and to your point about hammer
really
and dolly, I mean, Carrie was able to bring the beauty out in that thing. It was the orange one.
Yeah, so that was,
and it was way over restored in my opinion. But you tell me how you felt about it.
It wasn't. I think the paint's probably better than what it would have looked like.
Oh yeah,
original.
Sure. Yeah,
but the way it's built, it's going to have some modern touches to it, but it's still going to look. When you look at that, it's going to look like an original bike.
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing like exotic about it. And the guy that owns it's up in he is up in Anderson. Great guy. He's brought me some other work, and I appreciate that. But I use Carrie all the time.
Yeah. So that was a big job. I mean, that was a nut and bolt restoration, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything got touched.
So we've talked about this a little bit, but we've talked also, Steve and I have talked on the show before about how much of an investment it is, not just in terms of time, but skills that you don't have. Not you, but I mean, somebody wants to get it restored. They've got to bring it to somebody like you to get it done right. How much money should a person expect to spend when they're doing a nut and bolt restoration on a scooter?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the very first question is, how's it coming to you? Is it straight? Is it not straight? Is it missing parts?
Yep.
How beat up is it?
What's the rarity of it? Is it a standard 150 or is it something in low numbers that they produced? I mean, all that stuff is an equation. Is it missing the stainless beadings that, good God, where are you going to find those? And
unobtainium.
You can find them, but it might cost you
it's
$600-800. It's going to cost you. So all that plays in, paint work. I don't know. You can, somewhere between 15 and maybe 2, somewhere around there. And,
easily. Yep.
Well,
Definitely.
Just the paint.
Just the paint, probably.
Right.
And I'm just throwing,
So now we're already close to $3,000. So we haven't even touched anything else.
Yeah,
yet,
I mean,
right? So sky's the limit.
Just
really.
say you bring in a straight Vespa and you want a full restoration. You want everything touched, engine, everything. I don't think you're leaving for less than probably 6.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. 6 on a good day when everything's straight. It's there. Yeah. There's not a lot of hammer and dolly work, and it's not rare. So I can, if I have to replace a part, it's there. Some parts I have to search for and buy new old stock, and that stuff's out there. But it's going to cost you a little bit of money and time.
So what do you tell customers in terms of expectations if they bring you something that's semi-beat, but it's got to have every nut and bolt?
It's going to take time, and it's not cheap. How much do you like this bike? Because
it takes what it takes.
It's going to run you somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 by the time you're done.
I didn't ask that question very well, but I know you have an answer. If a guy brings it to you in February, when is he going to get it back?
Oh, I mean, it just depends. I mean,
worst case,
year or two. I mean, it just depends.
Okay.
Because
it could be that long for sure.
If you're finding, there's some Vespas here that were strictly American market, and they made the headsets different. And then there's hardware that's different. It's not made in Europe. So you got to go search those new old stock parts out, which I have to do. I have to go find that stuff because I'm not going to go botch something. And that's what would set me apart than a lot of other people.
Oh yeah.
Trying to build one that's correct and it's straight because, well, my name's on it. And if it goes to someone else's shop, my name's on it.
Right.
They're going to know one way or
another. And
when
it gets sold, your name is still kind of on it.
Yeah.
Sometimes that gets passed along, right?
We've got to get Jeff Leverage into scooters. And John have never-ending business.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know him, but it sounds good.
You need to know him.
Hey, we've got another comment here from Roy Carruthers. Do we even need to go here, or what's this about here, Jon Gick?
eBay bodge warning.
Do you know what he's talking about there?
Well, yeah, I think I understand. Okay, I know what Roy's talking about. I had to think about that before. So,
you shouldn't have invited your friends. No,
probably about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, probably about the time I started really spending a lot of time in Vietnam, and there was a lot of foreigners there, and there's a lot more foreigners there today, but there was a lot there that was starting to buy Vespas, and they would ride them there, and so did I, and it's awesome. It's a great place to ride, and people started looking at that and said, you know what? I can pay a shop $400 to restore a Vespa. And then I can import them into the US and sell them for $3,500. And these things are, they're completely worn out because, they probably easily have 200 to 300,000 miles on it. Just like a car, like you and I would drive a car, and after 10 years, it's going to have what? 100,000 miles on it?
Yeah.
So they're driving these things every day to work, and it's wet in Vietnam half the year. It's wet. I mean, it's usually driving through puddles. So this stuff is it's just cancer. It's just everything's ate up. The engines are super bodged. They're just crap. I mean, you're nuts to buy one. That was a big deal. That stuff was coming in left and right. People were buying them, and they would stop working, and they'd take them to shops, and shops would be like, hell no, I don't want nothing to do with it because it was junk. I mean, just complete junk. And
I think we've done that before.
We have done that.
Yeah, you just send it away, be like, this thing is just used up. So, I mean, that's out there, and that's starting to wane down because I think they're starting to just run out of Vespas. But at one time, I read a report, or at least I talked to one of the shops there, that they were exporting like, a couple hundred Vespas a month out of Vietnam.
Oh wow!
And they were going all around the world. So I don't know. They've exported thousands and thousands and thousands of Vespas.
And so that brings us to the eBay.
Yeah, so there are a lot of stuff was put on eBay for $3,500 free shipping to you, and they would ship them out from Vietnam to here. So you look at a car. What do you want?
You mean they bought them in Vietnam and they showed them on eBay, but they weren't available in the U.S. yet until you bought it?
There's also that stuff going on.
Oh yeah, that'd be ugly.
There was a very shady side to it for sure, and And there was people that profited a lot from it in the U.S. that they weren't really Vespa people.
Yeah.
They wanted to make some money, and they made some money.
They did
by selling absolute junk. You have the opportunity to buy a '55 Chevy Bel Air, okay, in the U.S. Maybe it comes out of Nevada, and it's got 55,000 miles on it. Sounds pretty good. Or you can buy the same car restored in Cuba with 300,000 miles on it.
Ooh.
Yeah, but so that's
yeah.
Put in
that's
car
the
talk.
difference. Yeah,
that's the difference, and no one in their right mind would do that. But these people get very emotional on these buys. They get very emotional, and they're just putting out money like crazy.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping next week on Meekum.
Yeah. They get the emotion instead of thinking with their head and asking questions. Go to any legit Vespa person or Vespa shop, and they'll let you know. You show them a photo, they'll let you know if that's either American market or that thing's coming out of Asia, and you don't want an Asian Vespa. You just don't want one.
Okay, so there you go. Don't get an Asian Vespa. Hey, we're about to end. This was a great show.
I've got a million more questions for John.
Went over.
He's got more depth. We'll have to have him come back or dial in or something. I have one request. I'm going to show this.
What's our tool of the day?
I'm going to show you this, but the one request I'm going to make is that Roy Carruthers sends us a picture of his Banshee engine Lambretta so we can share it the next time we have a show.
That would be good.
So my tip of the week is if you're working on old motorcycles or you're doing any wiring, make sure you have this. This is heat shrink tubing. You can buy it in all kinds of sizes. It's cheap. I'll give a shout out to Earl's where you can buy it from Mark Miko. You need this, even if you don't know you need this. So go get it, experiment with it, and see why I'm saying that.
All right. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time.